I'm trying out DeepSeek for the very first time, and then this will be for C# coding. It's more like an first impressions check. I'm going to ask it to generate some code and then ask it a couple of C# questions. At this point, AI has been around for a while by now, and there shouldn't be any major wow. Everybody has been using ChatGPT for a long time, and also Claude Sonnet along the way came along, which is supposedly better at coding. So before I even start using DeepSeek, my expectations are already very, very high. I would be surprised if it makes some elementary mistakes. I don't really see the point of asking DeepSeek to create a game such as Tetris or Snake because I mean it's not really testing AI because it's been pre-trained by now. I mean it's a very common prompt. And in my opinion, if it's already solved the problem a number of times and memorized the answer, it's no longer doing any thinking. It's more like just doing memory recall. So in this first impressions, I'm going to ask it to generate some code for me and then also some very simple C-sub questions. For my first challenge, I'm prompting DeepSeek to generate code from detailed instructions contained in pseudocode. I have another video where I prompted ChatGPT to generate exactly the same code where it had to create a simple percentages calculator. I have the unit tests ready and expecting DeepSeek to pass immediately without any issues. This percentages calculator basically has a percentage represented in three display formats. First as a fraction, then percentage as raw numbers, then finally percentages as a string with the percentage sign. So now, giving the prompt, and as expected, it generates the correct code, but just a lot slower than ChatGPT. I had to wait a little bit longer as I was watching it type on the screen, and asking it if it can go a little bit faster. In short, the answer is no. But I mean, the code is okay. The request was not that complicated. The AI does the job. It's more or less similar to what ChatGPT is doing. The only concern is that if I have a whole lot of files then and a bigger solution, this is going to take a little bit too long. So overall, for this very simple code generation, I would give it 8 out of 10. In this section, I will ask DeepSeek a variety of questions about C#, web development, as well as software development in general. And I did not really take a long time to try and trick out or catch out the AI. Just straightforward, quick questions. But I'm expecting this AI to give refined answers close to what an experienced human developer would give. So now the first question, I want to be a web developer. What is the list of things that I would need to know? This question is a little bit too open-ended and it's leaving scope for crucial information being left out. At first glance, there's nothing wrong or there's nothing major missing in this list. The main thing is that it managed to separate the front end, back end, and it's actually using the term full stack developer. But on a deeper look, so let's just imagine you're starting out and you're wanting to learn development and you are naively over-relying on AI to be your main source of information. I mean, there is a lot of information to know about how to become a web developer. AI might be a little bit misleading to somebody who's just absolutely starting out. Just a little bit because all the crucial information is presented here in this long list, but it's not well categorized. Example, immediately source control stands out. Source control is not just the front end or back end, but it's just the entire source code. So even the documentation can be placed under source control. And I think that source control should actually be its own category or under general development skills. It is there for front end, but now DeepSeek didn't put it under the backend section as well. So this could be a little bit misleading that, source control is just for front end. And then on the front end libraries, there's Angular missing. API should be in its own section. It's actually more backend than anything. Okay, so now would this answer replace a human? Are there crucial bits of information missing? No, not really at this stage. And okay, if we go into the section backend development, JavaScript is more, I would say C# and Java, not JavaScript, are actually more complete programming languages. And while JavaScript is actually more front end. So again, it's a little bit of it's not wrong, but it could be misleading to say that JavaScript is a backend development language. And when it comes to frameworks, I would prefer that they get listed in order of popularity. And then there is actually ASP.NET missing, which is actually a big entire ecosystem. Databases has Microsoft SQL Server missing. That's actually another big technology. And I think the AI is trying to imply that there's open source development only. DevOps should be its own category altogether. It's too big a topic to simply lump into backend development. Also, I think Git, source control, Git should fall under DevOps. And then when we come to the building project section, it's a little bit opinionated, and DeepSeek doesn't explicitly state that these are just examples of projects you could be doing. Building an e-commerce site is going to require a team if you're going to have a one that's actually functional and it's actually usable. The one big point is always going to be payment processing. And a new developer might actually struggle with just all the little parts to just trying to string all the bits and pieces together just to have a e-commerce site working. But then your main goal was simply to just learn, like to start learning how to become a web developer. So overall, how do I rate this answer? Given that this is supposed to be artificial intelligence, I would give it 6 out of 10. And I think this is actually a good test for an open-ended question. And there was great scope for AI to just spit out useful information, but it's not really arranged correctly and it could be misunderstood. And I feel that this answer is not very human intelligent enough. It's just mostly information which is not being refined. And I will not be advising a new developer to start learning by building an e-commerce site. And another big concern on this answer is that ASP.NET was missing from the list of frameworks. Okay, now I'm going to ask DeepSeek for a very tricky development question. One about entity framework, if it is good enough to be used as an abstraction, or does one still need to use the repository pattern? And really, there isn't a right or wrong answer on this one. It's very opinionated. Many developers have got their different ways of handling this thing. And this is going to be very tricky it's an unfair question to ask AI. We know it's not intelligent by its own. It has to go to the web and then it's just trained from information that other people have supplied it. So it might have been trying its best from conflicting information. But just looking at how it tries its best, I don't want to read this whole answer here again, but some of the points it raises are actually quite valid. The cons of just using entity framework on its own, tight coupling, and you have got a limited abstraction. So it's going to be difficult for you to maintain a large application because you're tied to entity framework. You didn't have an abstraction layer. And then now using the repository pattern, I don't think that there's actually many cons or disadvantages other than this potential misuse. That once you go the repository pattern route, you are maybe having higher coding standards, or you being a little bit of a snob in a way. So the only real issue would be that you have this repository pattern that's a leaky abstraction. So you're still indirectly tied. Maybe when you go into a project, you've linked a project that's using the entity framework. So you didn't use another design pattern, which is the clean architecture. And then when to use entity framework alone, this is not a good enough reason if your application is small or medium. So the choice here is about your coding standards and maybe your architectural direction. So if you want to be very strict in terms of your architecture and you want to maybe have it quite clean and you maybe following a very strict architecture, then you're definitely going to be using the repository pattern. But if you're doing something like a demo way, something that you're going to be throwing away quite quickly, so it doesn't hurt to just maybe just use the entities or the DB sets directly. So I don't think these answers here are good enough. And again, this is another tricky one and a little bit unfair on DeepSeek. So I would give it 7 out of 10. Mostly satisfied with the answer, but my opinion is still not right. But I would give it 7 out of 10 on this question. Okay, so another coding question. What is dependency injection? This is a very common design pattern. And here's the answer given here. Relies on a data service and version of control, dependency injection, constructor injection, setter injection, testability. Those are the benefits: testability, decoupling, reusability, flexibility, and it gives an example that has to how you can use it, and dependency injection frameworks. So, I mean, this answer again, I would give it 10 out of 10. Yet again, it's a straightforward, simple. There should not have been any tricks. More or less what I was expecting. Simple. It was supposed to get this one right. So no surprises here. Moving on to ask DeepSeek a simpler question. Which one is better for web development between ASP.NET or PHP? Okay, this answer is reasonable. There's not anything wrong that stands out. This is a much, much simpler question than the previous one. It starts out by giving out some information which appears to be factual. ASP.NET is best suited for enterprise level applications. PHP, learning curve, easier for beginners due to simpler syntax and widespread tutorials. I mean, you can find tutorials for .NET as well, so not entirely true, but still okay. I mean, it's a reasonable answer. And best for small to medium-sized projects. I mean, nothing wrong with this answer. And I mean, somebody who is absolutely starting out will have to do their own part on their side and actually maybe try and watch videos of real people giving their working experience with each technology. But this answer, there's not much wrong with it. I would actually give this a good 8 out of 10. So now the next question, also an opinionated question. There's not a right or wrong answer, but just trying to really get to see how intelligent this AI really is. How long does it take to become a web developer? It's claiming basic proficiency is 3 to 6 months, intermediate level 6 to 12 months, advanced 1 to 2 years. And my favorite bit here was the, I think, accelerated paths, coding bootcamps, and self-study with a structured curriculum. That's really, really important. I think this is maybe the most important golden nugget of wisdom here. But the timelines are a little bit, you can always say it depends on the person and depends on the amount of hard work you're putting in. But to become an advanced web developer within 2 years is very unrealistic. It's more like 2 years you'll be between a very good junior or very basic proficiency and an intermediate level. And advanced is anything between 3 to about 5 years. And again, I mean, it just goes to how much, there's just a lot to know. And this answer has actually left out the back-end programming where you've got C# and Java. So I think it's assuming you're only doing front end. But if you're doing full stack, then you're typically looking at maybe, you can safely just take these timelines and maybe double them. So, you're looking at about a year to become basically proficient. That's if you're doing front end plus back end development, if you're becoming a full stack developer. And again, the question has been deliberately made open-ended, not trying to trick the AI, but it should have been able to give a slightly more realistic answer. So my rating for this, I would give it 6 out of 10. The answer isn't really realistic, but the only bits of nuggets of useful information are these last bits here, especially that you're going to have to put in a lot of intensive working and that you're going to have to need some structured curriculum. Okay, now this should be yet another much simpler question because all that DeepSeek needs to do is just crawl the web and then extract some information. What is the typical salary for a web developer in China, England, USA, then South Africa? And here's the information here. I live in South Africa. Just by the way, I haven't I haven't been employed for a while, so I wouldn't exactly know the market. But these figures, they do look realistic. I don't think they seem reasonable and realistic. And I did double check with other AI systems for the United States, and that's roughly correct. The only thing here is that there's no source of this information given. So I'm going to ask it to state the source. Okay, that seems about correct. So for this answer, I mean, I would give it 10 out of 10. But I mean, 10 out of 10 for this one, it doesn't carry the same weight as the others that were sort of more difficult. So there's nothing intelligent about this answer. This is not testing AI. This is more like just testing a web scraper and just, scrape some information in the net and then summarize it. So there's nothing really difficult about this section. Overall, my first impressions, for simple code generation, I would give it 8 out of 10. And tricky open-ended questions about software development, 6 out of 10. And then for very simple, straightforward questions, 8 out of 10. I find this version of DeepSeek to be just okay because AI is no longer a novelty. My expectations were high for this AI, but was left a little bit disappointed when I asked open-ended questions, specifically around coding and software development, where it's not just about spitting out cold facts. I feel at this stage, the AI is a little far away from mimicking a real human expert. It can scrape data for sure and attempt to arrange it, but there was still some refinement needed for some challenging questions. Of course, it will improve very quickly, just like all other models. Within days of me making this video, it might be a lot better. But as a first impressions, because DeepSeek is no longer the first AI model, I thought I would have been wowed a little bit more.